I just did
For
2 years,
safety
you don't have the
reasons.
list.
Right.
I'm looking at the list, and yet we have 2 years ago, I'm looking at about 13 paras that were trained.
Yeah.
And so
Well, I
I'm
know that
wondering why
Myron
that's,
Camera used to
yeah.
be trained.
Yeah.
I know that she used to be certified, but,
And
so
the
just
schools.
some things
Yeah.
to keep in mind. Well, I think that that's great, I think
Yeah, that's awesome.
that answers a lot of my questions as far as what the plan is.
First, yeah.
I'm just trying to see if there was anything else that.
I know you have a couple of topics, I don't want to take up all the time, but
Right,
I tried
no,
to cover.
Just so I can be
Sure.
if there were a restraint form, will that be sent to the parent, or what does the form look like? 'Cause-
Yeah, there's actually several different forms, and here are the forms that are in the school committee policy.
Oh, it's in the policy.
They're
I'll
actually,
just-
they're attached.
Yeah, I'll
They're
look.
attached. It depends on if you are dealing with an escort as a result, or is it a
The policy read that
restraint.
if you take a child by the hand and walk with them, then you have to fill out a form and the principal is supposed to call within a day. And that's kind of what is
And
just,
And that was a
it's
concern
really
that parent-
unreasonable
okay,
because,
yeah.
yeah.
Well,
And in
I-
fairness,
they are
the
gonna-
form, that definition is what the law states. So it wasn't, it's not that it's a bad thing, but it wasn't happening.
But the policy
Right.
does say a parent could sign a waiver too.
Yes.
So, and not
Yes.
personally, but, you know.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I think
actually,
in
what it-
individual cases.
So
So
some parents will sign a waiver.
Well, I don't think anybody knew about it.
Okay.
Nobody ever asked me to sign a waiver.
Yes.
So, and I'm well in a heartbeat.
I think
Actually,
that's fair.
physical escort is touching or holding a student without the use of force. So the moment that Johnny doesn't want to come with you anymore, and I'm going to tell you from experience that this happens, and for safety
Routine.
reasons, you have to keep the child safe, you have to keep the child where he needs to be. And so, without the use of force is a pretty narrow amount of time in certain
Right, I mean,
circumstances.
picture your own children when you say go to your room and they say they don't want to. I mean, there's gonna be a time when you say, okay, no, and you need to take their hand.
I
Pull it out a little bit and
I know.
listen to. I mean, so
My take
Yeah.
with the group
it's
here.
reality.
That's
Yeah.
mom's job.
Yeah, that's mom's, oh yeah, it's
They
all
got
mom's
always
supposed
have
to
to
be the bad guy,
fill out the
yeah.
restraint form, and then, according to the law, where do those forms go? Are parents getting copies, and are they being notified,
They haven't,
per
been,
house?
is what they've just said, is they
For
haven't.
the escorts, they have not. They
Right,
haven't,
right.
they've not interpreted it the way it needs to be
Well,
done.
I don't think even for restraints across the board in general, I know that Teresa
Yeah.
herself has had experience where she's been informed
Yeah.
in her back and forth, but not with that form, as it states in the policy, it has to be that
Results.
form.
Yeah.
So, and I think that my son also has been in that circumstance, and
And how have you been notified by phone call, is that it usually?
really, we have back
Yeah.
and forth notebooks.
Oh, back and forth.
So I think most of the time it's written somewhere,
Yeah.
but because we're trying,
Yeah.
as I said before, we're trying to help you, we
I-
want to protect the district.
Well, what I
Personally,
said-
having been in those shoes, I'm like, oh my gosh, if this was me, I could have been in a lot of trouble.
Right,
So
somebody
I'm-
of a phone.
yeah.
I often come across that I'm being critical of the group. I have to say in this instance, it has been informative.
Yeah.
It allowed me to say to my, and just so you know, if those of you like my style or not, what I will say is how I shared with the principals, they were meeting before them, I said, listen, folks, look at our policy. This is what exists.
Yeah.
If the procedures are not consistent with this, can you give me some explanation as to why? And let's talk about either changing the policy or making sure that our procedures are in line with that. And that's how I approached it, and that's what they did, which is, for the most part, they looked through and said, yes, this is the case, they talked, and then those issues came up, and I'm like, I'm okay with that. Let's either work with a corrective plan to fix it,
Right.
or let me bring the policy back to the school. If it's a policy issue, let's go back to the school committee and say, can we change the policy? I didn't get the sense that the principals at all felt the policy needed to be changed. I think the practice and procedure.
Right.
And in fairness,
So-
we wouldn't have investigated, short of what the department asked us to look into, which we obviously had to provide to them,
Yeah.
this as much as we did. So I
Did they
think
So the
say
only
that they
other-
sent restraint forms home to parents? Because I haven't heard.
to do that, see, the DSC investigative report, and there was a complaint issued, asked to look at multi-years. DESE does not look at multi-years, they look at the current year, and that's and I'm just using language they use, so they focused on this school year. So as a result, what we submitted to them was what was received, and then based on that information, they,
So you're
They
saying
made a
parents did
determination.
receive that restraint form? 'Cause I haven't heard, like,
if there were restraints, but their focus on their investigation was on a limited group.
But she's asking for our policy, our school policy, correct?
right, like.
You're asking if the principals
Or have
claims
they
that these
had-
forms have gone home
Yes,
for
the
restraint.
parents.
For
I
the
haven't heard
restraint, not
any
the escort.
So restraints,
restraints.
It's a restraint,
Okay.
yeah, that's the escort. Come on in.
Hey, George.
Yeah, we supplied them whatever reports that were submitted to fill out. That's what we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then I just have a couple of questions, because you
Sure.
mentioned Irene Fortin, who of
Yep.
course we talked to because we weren't gonna call every principal, but we wanted
Yep.
to at least communicate with ours. And, but my question then would be, I'm assuming that every principal would be following suit as far as making sure that these changes were, or some kind of communication was in the IEP
Yep.
to protect, children who
That
need
was
more hand
communicated with
over
all
hand
four
and that
principals.
type
We
of
had a
thing.
training
And the
for
parents.
the principals.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So
no,
will there be a training, because if it's more in-depth training as you're describing for
Yep.
September of 2012, if that has, I'm sorry, for 2011.
Yeah, 2011, yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's our intent.
If that hasn't happened in the same manner this year, is there something that's gonna happen at the schools now? Like, are they gonna do something in January to make sure that everybody is aware of this and what the plan is for September?
We did have anything planned, I'm not saying we shouldn't, I'm just saying we hadn't had that discussion was
Because
that
there's
they
a
have
lot
the
of, there's
policy.
2 more
Sure.
trimesters
Yeah.
almost
Yeah,
left.
Brad and I
Yeah.
have spoken about putting together the PowerPoint and the
Okay.
PowerPoint.
Yeah, I don't
Some
think
of
so,
them
yeah,
went
yeah.
at the Department of Ed
Maybe it's a
website,
matter
so
of
you
just
could probably
handing out the
modify
policy
that.
again to everybody.
Yep.
I mean,
And having a
I
15-minute
hate to
staff
print
meeting.
more stuff, or, an email.
I don't have a problem, and I think it's a good idea, I don't think
Yeah.
any of the principals would have any objection to, I think,
Good
I'll be
idea.
honest with you, just me, without a PowerPoint presentation, asking the principals to go through the policy again and review that with staff, I think would bring a heightened awareness to this piece.
Right.
I think the other piece I think that Sue and I have talked about with Brad is potentially looking at some more training too, and trying to incorporate, bring some more people in
Great.
and to provide that, so.
So, okay, so the principals you're considering having the principals do some kind of reminder soon for the staff for the rest of the
well,
school year?
I mean, I don't have a problem with saying that they will include it in their next faculty meeting,
Yeah.
that
Okay.
they'll include the
No.
restraint policy in
Be
their
aware
next.
that paraprofessionals generally do not attend that training. So you probably want to just make a note to make sure that that trickles down in some
Have a
fashion.
separate training.
Because, I
That's
think
right,
that
yeah.
there's an assumption that, the teachers are trained, everybody's trained, but a lot of times it's the paraprofessional that gets that call that, come help,
To,
so.
So the parents aren't attending all our
They
meetings?
don't go to
They
staff
So in
cover-
meetings.
middle
Well,
school, they
and
do
in
it, that differs then from school to school then.
Perhaps it
All right,
does,
all right.
perhaps it does, but not
Okay, I know
consistently.
someone doing it in the morning and that, okay.
Right, and it may be contract issues, it may be
Yeah,
that they
yeah.
can't ask the paras to
I
be
can
there
be sure
early.
that in fact,
I know that a lot
that
of
the
times it's before
policy
school
is shared
starts.
with all staff. I referenced the faculty meeting, but if it requires an additional meeting, that makes sense.
And like I said to Susan, there is something on the Department of Ed website that you could probably modify that's existing.
Oh, right.
So, because Melissa and I looked at that, right, Melissa?
I think that's done.
Brad
You-
and I
the
were
group is
thinking
well,
of
and when I say it's done,
incorporating that with
so on my list, it will be communicated to the
Thank
principals.
you.
Excellent.
Okay, so I know that we want to move on, but I just briefly want to talk about timeout procedure, because I know that the policy talks about, obviously in seclusion restraint, it's against, nobody does seclusion restraint. You always make sure that there is a student with a faculty member if they have to be removed from the classroom. That's what the policy states, I know that's the law. However, I also know that there have been times in my own experience and also that have been communicated to me where a paraprofessional may be asked to spend an extended period of time with a student, maybe multiple times across days, weeks, months. I called George Hale at the Department of Ed because he's the expert, he's like the guy that's on the team for seclusion restraint, and because I was just trying to get a feel for what's generally a timeout policy, what is the standard? So there wasn't anything specific. What came across, and I'll share I can forward you the email that that we had back and forth. But basically, he was very clear that if a child needed to be removed repeatedly for more than a short, brief interval, we're talking, up to 10 minutes, that, parents have to be on board and informed, because in these cases that I'm talking about, the parents were not on board and not informed that their children were sometimes missing hours out of the day, which of course then gets into the
That
whole.
becomes a suspension.
Yeah.
basically.
But then if the parent's not informed, it can't be a suspension.
No, I know, no, I'm saying, I mean, technically, that's what it becomes.
Yeah.
Right,
should
and
be.
that is what
Right.
George
If
Hale
you're
said
not
as well,
supporting
he
the
said
program.
it would be an in-house.
In-house suspension.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying they're never informed, I'm just saying that it has been reported, and I know that in my own experience, there was a child who I worked with who had some very serious behavior issues, who needed to have some support. And so, this is all done in an act of trying to
Yeah.
protect the class,
Right.
trying to protect the student.
Right.
There was no malicious intent here. However, the child missed a lot of class time, because I'm walking around building with the kid, you know, because he can't be in class.
He needs a break.
And the parents were just not aware of what was going on. So, that being said, we were hoping that the board or the administration might consider a more, because we looked through your policies, I know we came and did all these copies.
Yeah.
We were looking for a timeout procedure, and there doesn't seem to be one. So we were hoping that you would consider a timeout procedure that would be something along the lines of a 1 minute per age for a timeout. Obviously, you're dealing with a 4-year-old, 4 minutes should be a maximum. If you're dealing with a 10-year-old, 10 minutes should be the maximum at the elementary school level for a timeout. And we also were hoping that you would consider saying something that, you know, if there's more than 3 timeouts per month where the child has to be removed from the classroom, that it might kick in, say, an RTI meeting to see what needs to be done for the child to provide positive behavioral supports. And then if RTI fails after a period of time, that, you know, that the next step would be taken to see if the child needed
Kristen,
services.
can you forward
I will,
the
I know,
email
yeah, I'm
to
talking
Sue?
fast. So
Just what you're looking to see?
I just think it would help
Yeah, like an
the staff.
intervention meeting.
Yeah, like their
Instead of
response to
an RTA meeting.
yeah, or an behavior intervention or
If you could, I mean,
functional behavioral
I just got a
assessment.
few bullets, if you could send to Sue what
Right.
you're looking for, we can meet with the principals and see if we can put something before policy is even adopted, whether we can just kind of have some procedures in place.
Some
that are consistent
procedures,
across
right,
the
that were
board.
standard across the board.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think we need like parents to be notified if your child needs a timeout, because we know those happen so infrequently, so it shouldn't be a big deal that, you know, if your child needs to be removed. I think as a parent, I like to know, and I think just as a staff member, it covers everybody. Like, you know, somebody took my kid out alone
Yeah.
somewhere.
Well, I think I would include that, if that's the
Everyone
request,
or-
if that's one of the things
Yeah,
that the
parent-
parent.
Call it,
Any-
any parent would be happy with a quick note, I mean, I know, like,
Took a break.
with third grade beyond, they've got their little agenda book,
I don't
sometimes a
know.
quick note from the teacher, you know what? He spent 15 minutes away from the class, we went for a walk, he settled down, we had a drink, whatever, because when your child comes home and says to you, well, I had to miss gym class today because I had this rotten day, and you've gotten no phone call and no note from a teacher and you know nothing, it really kind of just sets the tone, like, you feel like everything's being done behind your back and you don't know why things are happening.
And other kids
Yeah,
talk,
you're getting-
kids tell, oh, I saw Brandon walking around the building.
And that's how I walk into Cub
They
Scouts
do,
and hearing how your
and
child
you're
was
like, whoa,
disciplined
what
today.
happened? And what is the difference then, you just made a good point, between timeout and break?
No, there's a difference.
So we'd have to, because
Well, I
what you
think
just
that's
kind
what-
of
I
talked
think you have
about,
to
I would
define that.
consider
You're
a
gonna
break.
have to define
Yeah,
that.
we
You're
might
gonna have
want
to
to
define
define
that, because I think before you come with a
Because you do
procedure,
have
it has to
sensory
be,
breaks and.
Sure,
it needs to be
yeah.
some